Okay, so let's take a look at page 155 first. I want to go over this with you guys so that we're good for just a lot of the stuff we're going to do and stuff that's on your test. All right, so in this case, we're going to talk about rectangles today. So I'm going to start off with a slight rectangle problem, okay? So again, 155 in your companion, or you can write it down on a piece of notebook paper. I am good either way, okay? But you're going to see something similar to this on your test, so I want to make sure we have it covered. So I'm giving you just a minute to copy this down if you're copying it. $155. Okay, so if we take a look at this, it says a rectangle with area 1,600 square meters is 4 times as long as it is wide. What is the sum of the diagonals? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw my rectangle. Okay. Now it's telling me that it is 4 times as long as it is wide. So everything is going to be based off of the width. Now, before we find our diagonals, we need to find what this width is so that we can find the sides. Okay, so step 1 is to find W. And we're going to do that using the area of a rectangle. So area of a rectangle is length times width. Our length is 4W times our width, which is just W. But we have the area of the rectangle, which is 1,600 square meters. So I'm going to set that equal to 1,600. So I'm going to simplify. This is going to be 1,600 equals 4W squared. Because W times W leaves you with a square. From here, I'm going to divide both sides by 4, which leaves me with 400 equals W squared. And then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. So this is just, again, a little bit of a review of algebra concepts. So then W in this case equals 20. Okay, now that we found W, that ends up being 20, this ends up being 80. And that's going to help us find the diagonals. So here's my diagonal. I have a rectangle, so I know that's a right angle right there. And I need to find this hypotenuse, which I'm going to label X. So step 2 is to apply the Pythagorean theorem. And I will argue that this is the part you need more than this. This was just to get here, okay? This you'll need next year. Even though it's Algebra 1, you'll still need it next year. Okay, so the Pythagorean theorem, remember, is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay? Or I like to say it's leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. And the hypotenuse is always directly across from the 90-degree angle, so then the other two have to be the legs. Okay? So when I set this up, I know this is 20, that makes this side 20. So my legs are going to be 20 and 80, so I'm going to have 20 squared plus 80 squared equals my hypotenuse, which I labeled x, and I'm going to square that. All right, so this ends up being 400. This ends up being 1,600. Oh, wait, maybe not. Hold on. I think it's 6,400. Hold on, double check, sorry. Yeah, 6,400. Oops, sorry about that. So I'm left with, in this case, 6,800 equals x squared. I'm then going to take the square root of each side. That leaves me with x equals 82.5. So that means this diagonal is 82.5. But they want the sum of the diagonals. So in order to get the sum of the diagonals, it's going to be 82.5 plus 82.5, which leaves you with about 165 meters. Now, I know this was a lot, but if you look here, this part, you're probably not going to see on your test. This part, you will. Okay? But this was just a kind of a nice little refresher. How are we doing? Questions on this? Okay. Can I get a volunteer to pass these out for our notes today? Thanks, Louise. Okay. All set? Thank you so much. The homework is on, it's on Save Us today. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. So today we already discussed about. I posted the note sheet from yesterday, but we're gonna do squares and we're gonna do rectangles today. Okay, so let's scroll on down to rectangles. Plus, plus, plus. The internet is acting a little wonky. Take out your foldables also, because rectangles and squares have kind of an interesting little relationship. All right. So it's saying since all rectangles are parallelograms, all rules for parallelograms apply to rectangles. All right, so this says every corner. Okay, so a couple of new rules are two additional properties. Every corner angle equals 90 degrees, and diagonals are congruent. Now, if we look at our parallelogram is a rectangle if you have two of those in there, but here's the other part that might be helpful, is that diagonals actually bisect each other. They're not perpendicular bisectors, but they do bisect each other as well, okay? All right, so, with it. Anybody still writing this down? I'm going to have to clear it. Okay, well, let me clear that. Anyway, use rectangle MATH to answer the following. So in this case, if we're talking about this is going to be congruent with this. These two are going to be congruent with each other as well. And they're asking us for the angle measure. So MA, in this case, is going to be 12 centimeters. MH is going to be 8 centimeters. And MAT, which is this angle right here, is going to be 90 degrees. Questions on this? Anybody still writing? I don't know why this one's not disappearing. Okay, well, something's definitely weird today. All right, number 5. Use rectangle MNOP to answer the following. So in this case, if MR, so MR is 6, this diagonal right there is 6, then NP, or P to N. Now, one thing that you should know about the diagonals of a rectangle, remember, they're congruent, but they bisect each other, right? So if that's 6, this is 6. So then RN ends up being what? 6. So PN ends up being 12. And then they're saying RN, okay, it's 6. We already know. Questions on that one? I'm sorry, this keeps dragging, guys. All right, given the quadrilateral TGIF is a rectangle, use the properties of a rectangle and the figure at the right to find the following. All right, so they're asking us to find this information. All right, so they're saying if TX is 13, so this is 13, then TI, what does TI equal? 26. And then what's FG going to equal? I'm sorry? 26, yeah, because the diagonals are congruent. All right, for part 2, it says solve for x if tx, so they're saying this right here, is 4x plus 4, and fx is 7x minus 23. Now, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to set both of these equal to each other since we're talking about this segment and this segment. Okay? So this is going to be 4x plus 4 equals 7x minus 23. I'm going to subtract the 4x from each side. I'm going to add the 23 to each side. So this is going to be 27 equals, looks like 3x. And then I divide both sides by 3. So x is equal to 9 in this case. How are we doing so far? We doing okay? I'm going to erase this. Is anybody still copying this down? Okay, the next one says solve for x if the measure of angle XFT equals 6x minus 4 and the measure of XFI is 10x minus 2. All right, so x to f to t. So they're talking about this one right there is 6x minus 4 and x to f to I. This guy right here is 10x minus 2. Now, if we look at all of these, this whole angle here, so TFI, what is TFI equal to? 90. It's equal to 90 degrees. We covered that already, right? So that means when we work on both of these, we're going to set this up as 6x minus 4 plus 10x minus 2 equals 90 degrees. So if I work on this, this will be 16x minus 6 equals 90. I'm going to add 6 to both sides. This is 16x equals 96. Divide by 16. Let's see. 96 divided by 16. I got x equals 6. Questions on rectangles? Anything? Ready to move on to squares? Anybody still writing this down? Okay. All right, let's take a look at squares. So this is going to help us. All squares are parallelograms. Write that in. Therefore, all rules of parallelograms apply to squares. But wait, there's more. Squares are also rhombuses and and a rectangle. Therefore, a square has all the properties that we have discussed. So think of it this way. Parallelogram had a baby, named it rhombus. Rhombus and rectangle got married, had a baby named square. Square contains all that DNA. All right? So let's take a look at example 7 here. So this says use square LMJK to answer the following. If LK, so they're saying if this is 5 centimeters, what is the perimeter? Who can tell me? Perimeter is adding all the sides. And all the sides are congruent in a square, so it's 20. Yep. 20 centimeters. They're also asking for the measure of LMP. So L to M to P. So right here. That is 45 degrees. Because remember, we said yesterday that a rhombus bisects the opposite angles with that diagonal, right? So that counts here because a square is a rhombus. LKP, so L to K to P is also 45 degrees because of the same reasoning. K to J to M, so K to J to M is 90. If LJ, so here's LJ, equals 14 centimeters, then PJ ends up being 7 because it's cut in half because those diagonals bisect each other. And KM is going to be congruent with LJ, so that is also 14. Anybody still writing this down? Show of hands if you are. Okay. Moving on. All right, find the length of SV for square QRST. So here is SV. This is 21. All right. So if this is 21, that means all of these sides are 21. They want you to find the diagonal. This is where Pythagorean theorem is going to come in handy because we have a right angle right there. We have the two sides. We're going to look directly across at that diagonal. So this is going to be 21 squared plus 21 squared equals, I'm just going to call this SV squared. (21 squared) is 441. I add those together, I get 882. And then I'm going to take the square root of each side. That leaves me with about SV is about 29.7. This is not working out today. And that would be your answer. How are we doing so far? Any questions on number 8? Anybody still writing? All right, I'm going to delete that. All right, so given the square JKLM, if angle JML equals 15x plus 60, find the value of x. All right, so in order to find the value of x, they're saying that JML, so this whole thing, we know this is automatically equal to what? How many degrees? How many degrees is it? Each angle of a square is equal to how many degrees? Bueller, anybody? What did we say at the beginning? The rectangles each had, it even says in your foldable. 90, yeah. So we're going to set this up as 15x plus 60 equals 90. Subtract the 60 from each side. This leaves you with 15x equals 30. And we're going to divide both sides by 15. Hi. So then x is equal to 2. My goodness. Break is not coming quick enough for all of us, I think. Questions? How we doing? Homework is on Savings. I think it's 15 problems. So lots of algebra there. Get going. Yes. Yeah. Those you watch at home, have a great day.